Hey there, this is Matt with State of Flux, here with yet another one of my MCU movie reviews on the road to Avengers Doomsday. This time we're here to talk about Iron Man 3. And this movie kind of gets a bad reputation, and on one hand, I get it. If you're just watching the Iron Man movies alone, exclusively just them, this film feels so radically different. This is far more of a Shane Black movie, the writer-director, than it is an Iron Man movie in its traditional sense. So much so that Iron Man clocks very little screen time in it in costume. Tony Stark very much has much more of a role in this than traditionally in these Iron Man films. And that kind of rubs people the wrong way. The just tonal dissonance that you get between Iron Man 1 and 2, which feel very firmly of the same world, the same speak, everything is intact, and then this one is just different. And also you have something that rubs the comic fanboys the wrong way, which is how they switched up the Mandarin. And I have kind of thoughts on that. I'm going to address them shortly. But when I rewatched this for really the first time in probably about 10 years, I was really impressed at how well this one holds up compared to some of the other movies that I've been rewatching. This one I remember having a lot more issues with, and maybe I've just softened to them, but I really resonated with this story this time around. I think the positives have always been intact. Shane Black has such a singular voice that comes through in this film, and it works for me. And it works for Tony Stark the way Robert Downey Jr. plays him and has always played him. So the Shane Black of it all has been something that I've liked. This time around, I responded even more to the visual look of the film, which looks more like a spruced up, that's a soft Christmas pun, spruced up Shane Black movie if he had infinite money. And I think it really just kind of, this is one of the last movies where a director had a visual stamp in the MCU for the first three phases. I think phase one, you got that a lot with Joe Johnson and with Kenneth Branagh, with Shane Black, with James Gunn, and kind of with James Gunn it stops. This time around, I really responded to that, as well as the choreography of the action gunplay. There's a lot of gun action in the movie, and I think this is really good. And you can see that the same man who wrote Lethal Weapon and that buddy cop dynamic is firmly at play here in this, and that I really responded well to that. Every time Stark is acting off somebody, it's fun and it's quippy, but the quips land. We were just talking about that with the Avengers a couple weeks back, and it really sticks here as well. If you are good at it, you can make it sing, and that's where this movie sings. I think that the Mandarin of it all is a double-edged sword. The Mandarin is a character that, in concept, is something we've aged well beyond. We recognize how problematic that character is on paper. And yet, he is the Green Goblin to Iron Man's Spider-Man, you know what I mean? Mandarin is the most significant villain that Iron Man has to face, and one of the biggest villains of the Marvel comics of his era, that bleeds into some other comics. So to not do Mandarin at all, or to ignore him, would also be a disservice. So the way to tackle that is to either display the character and just strip away the problematic elements, kind of as they did with him in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, or the other route is to update him to be a commentary on a problematic war figure. And I really liked what Shane Black's switcheroo with it was, in that he's of no one, like, area. There are significant pieces of his look that could suggest Asian, or Middle East, or European, or American. He even has the Captain America symbol with a little A, Anarchy, tattooed into the back of his neck. You have a lot of visual storytelling going on with the tattoos on him, with his wardrobe. And I think that was a really genuinely smart and interesting take on how to update the Mandarin for contemporary audiences that really genuinely does feel in line with the update to Tony Stark in the first Iron Man movie. Where it falls apart isn't the twist that the Mandarin is just a fictitious figurehead of alternative villainy. That works. That works wonderfully. And I think Ben Kingsley's performance as the Mandarin and his cadence of speech is fascinating. And then it's even fantastic when you reveal that he's Trevor Slattery, this coked out loser of an actor who's just involved in a role he doesn't understand. You know what I mean? It's so fun. It's so funny, and it's really inventive. No, the problem is the sole line of Aldrich Killian being like, "No, I'm the Mandarin," because you lose it. Like, yes, I get what he's saying. He manifested this fake Mandarin persona, and now we know several movies later that he took that from an actual Asian character within the MCU and repurposed it, retrofitted it to his own needs and whatnot. But it's the Aldrich Killian of it all that really hurts Iron Man 3. Not that he's a bad villain, it's just that you had a really compelling villain, and then you had a really compelling switcheroo going for it to just then become a relatively one-note villain at the end of the day that's just out for revenge. And it's the whole MCU's got a villain problem all over again, right? Because you didn't. For the first 3/4 of this movie, you really didn't. You had a compelling-ass villain. And then, no, it's just this boring-ass guy we met in the beginning of this one movie. And that's pretty disappointing. And it's not his fault. Guy Pearce does a decent enough job with it. But it's a hat on a hat, I think, is ultimately the issue. That being said, I think just the tonal switch of Shane Black's sensibilities versus Jon Favreau's sensibilities are so different that it's like whiplashy. And I've met people who respond way better to the Shane Black side of things than they do to the Favreau, and I've met vice versa. Having two movies fully immersed with Favreau, and then Joss Whedon kind of adapting the Favreau sensibilities into his screenplay for the Avengers, particularly with Tony Stark's character, it does make this one seem like the odd man out. Pepper Potts is given some interesting things to do. I genuinely thought we were going to get the death of Happy Hogan when I first watched this, especially with Favreau being out as director, and I was really sad about that, and really happy and surprised that he survived to carry on to this day in this character. War Machine gets an interesting update. They take his outfit and give him a neat paint job, very evocative of Captain America, and he's now the Iron Patriot, a character from the comic books that was actually Green Goblin, or Norman Osborn anyway. And I liked that. I thought that was neat. And it made interesting commentary of, in a post-Avengers world, how does the United States try to rebrand? And this is how they do it. I wish it would have continued further into other movies. It's kind of disappointing that that just dropped. Not that I'm saying I want him to be called the Iron Patriot, but any callbacks to it, because it is a pretty significant thing in this movie, and the fact that it just never comes back into play, at least in my memory, is pretty disappointing. Rebecca Hall is here. She's great. Completely underused. I understand that she was the alternate villain of the story. It wasn't just one person that created the Mandarin persona. It was two, but then the dickhead in charge of the Marvel Council of approving scripts and greenlighting projects that Feige originally had to answer to up until the end of the Phase 2 lot. Put his foot down as, no, we can't have a female villain, just because audiences wouldn't buy into it. And I think that watching the movie, it's very clear that she is supposed to be in on it as well, and then suddenly she's not, and she's just blithely killed off. Which is something that kind of happens to the female characters, often in Shane Black's stories, so that was also an added layer of disappointment, because you could see he was trying to grow as a filmmaker, and then situations were forced where he had to kind of fall back into some of his older ways or tendencies. Anyway, I like Iron Man 3. I think it's a good movie. With some great action set pieces, some great gunplay action at the end. I love the Christmas feel of the movie. I wish it would have leaned into it even just a little bit more, but as is, it's there, it's present, and I like it. I love Tony's Christmas gift to Pepper Potts of blowing up fireworks style all the remaining suits. I loved all the suits, and my favorite element of this movie is that it actually deals with the Avengers. Tony Stark is suffering from severe PTSD, and he doesn't know how to cope with what he's seen or the fact that he died briefly. And we get to see him simmer in that, and it becomes more of a character study than we're used to these comic book movies being. I think we should go back to movies more similar to this for these comic book films if the MCU is to stay around. That is something I think that, like, Captain America Brave New World was missing this year. Iron Man was able to capitalize on it in his third entry, and so maybe we will get something more like this from one of those characters moving on. But I like this movie quite a bit. Upon rewatch, I give it a 3.5 out of 4 stars. Let me know what you think of this movie. A lot of people really don't respond to it, but I like it. I think it's good. I think there's a lot to have here. There's this, like a stealth Jenna Ortega in the movie, which was quite the surprise for me. I will say the extremis of it all is a little hard to swallow, especially since if you're only watching the Iron Man movies, you haven't gotten anything supernatural, and suddenly this movie has people breathing fire. So that's a little hard to swallow even as a fan of, like, the MCU movies as a wider sci-fi entity. But yeah, it's good. Let me know what you thought of this film in the comment area down below. Like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.